Hello and welcome. You're watching NewsX and I'm Megha Sharma. The Hamas chief Yahya Sinwar, the mastermind behind the October 7 attacks, has been eliminated by the Israeli military in an operation in southern Gaza. Israel had confirmed the death of the Hamas chief after having examined the dental images and the DNA evidence. The death of Sinwar is a major boost to Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and the Israeli military. Now, Yahya Sinwar had been in hiding since 7th October attacks, which is considered as one of the deadliest attacks on Israel. Israeli military had been on the lookout for Sinwar for almost a year. Sinwar's assassination comes after a string of high-profile assassinations of prominent leaders and its enemies in recent months, including the Hezbollah top commander Hassan Nasrallah. After the elimination of Yahya Sinwar, the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has stated that this is not the end of war, rather the beginning of the end. He has also sent out a message to the people of Gaza by saying that the war can end tomorrow if Hamas releases all the 101 Israeli hostages. The US has also hailed Israel for eliminating Yahya Sinwar. The US President Joe Biden has said that this is a good day for Israel, US and the entire world. Meanwhile, Iran has, on the other hand, vowed escalation against Israel. Iran has said that Yahya Sinwar's death will strengthen the spirit of resistance. There has been another high-profile assassination, and what does this mean? And will this escalate the war between Israel and the proxies of Iran, Hezbollah and Hamas? Let's start this conversation. Joining me on the telecast currently is Shelly Eshkoli. Shelly, let's hear it from you about your perspective, particularly with regards to the death of Yahya Sinwar. He's been neutralized yesterday. There have been world leaders that have been congratulating Israel and Prime Minister Netanyahu for having neutralized these terrorists. He was the orchestrator of the 7 October attacks that took place yesterday, hostages that had been taken by the Hamas leaders. At this time, what is the probability and the chances that there could be a hostage exchange deal struck between Hamas and Israel?
Yes, hello India, love to hear. Greetings from Jerusalem. We've all received with great joy the news of yesterday, but it's important to remember it's not a person behind it. It's like maybe an evil force, we can say, or a thought, a whole building in the mind. So actually, the death of Sinwar is not worth anything if the hostages are not here, if peace is not gained, if both nations cannot live, happily and quietly. And it seems that it's not going to be quiet as long as someone else might replace Sinwar. As long as Iran and Hezbollah are still on the game, eliminating Sinwar is just not enough.
Also on the telecast with me, Patikrit Pen. Patikrit, let's understand how the situation could at this point of time be salvaged by Israel, particularly when the top commander of Hezbollah has been top commander of Hamas has been neutralized. What are the chances there can be a hostage exchange at this point?
Well, I think we're all praying, at least here we're all praying very from the depth of our hearts for that. I know Netanyahu's statement last night was to all the people in Gaza, whoever is holding anyone or has any information, please come for us. Like we're promising money, life, whatever, just bring us the hostages.
Right, absolutely. I also
the
have
most important thing for everyone here.
Yes. Patikrit, let's hear it from you in terms of how the global leaders at this time have congratulated. They've hailed this success by the Israeli defense forces, this neutralization of Sinwar. What are the implications here on?
Well, first of all,
I'll just interrupt you, Shelly. This question is posed for Patikrit Payne.
Well, Megha, first and foremost, this does certainly give Israeli defense forces a certain amount of edge because Yahya Sinwar is one of the top leaders, but it does not mean that the war is anyway going to end, because we have to understand Hamas is an ideology. It's not about one individual. So Hamas would invariably replace Yahya Sinwar with somebody else, most probably will be Khaled Mashal. If you take the recent example of what happened in Hezbollah, the death of Nasrallah, Hassan Nasrallah, has been a very, very big setback for Hezbollah. Certainly, Hezbollah, like Hamas, is down, but it is not out. So you have seen that Israel did not lower its guard, and rightfully so, because there has been a series of rocket attacks and missile attacks which continued from Hezbollah side. In case of Hamas also, I don't think the attacks are going to stop, because any kind of ceasefire would almost tantamount or mean that Hamas is conceding defeat. Now, the mentors and the financiers of Hamas would not want Hamas to actually concede defeat. And I think the entire issue of this conflict in Middle East will take a different, dimension altogether if Israel sooner or later goes for an assault on Iran. And then I think Iran would do all the more in terms of activating and ensuring that the attacks on Israel by these elements which have been funded and incubated by Iran, whether it is Hamas, Hezbollah, and Houthi, continue. So I think it's just a work in progress that's going on. I believe that it's just another day in the war, but to presume that it would end, or to presume that Hamas would give up arms, or would expect, would extend an arm of peace towards Israel, it's not going to happen. And I think Israel knows it more than anyone else, that it is just another day in the conflict. It certainly does not mean that the conflict is going to end. It certainly does not mean that Hamas is going to give up on its ideology or their hatred that they have for Israel. Global leaders have time to time keep on giving bites for the media. I don't think it's going to make much of a difference so far as Israel's preparation towards this conflict is concerned. Back to you.
Ambassador Archon Malhotra, let's hear it from you, particularly with regards to the counterattacks that come from Iran and other countries and proxies that support Iran in its war against Israel, talking about how the Netanyahu government does not care about the lives of Israelis, because thus far there has not been a hostage deal that has been struck, despite repeated attempts at it by Hamas leaders and the Israelis. There had been intervention that had been tried by Qatar. There had been the United States intelligence services that had also been part of those failed negotiations thus far. Can Israel at this point of time, spin it around on Hamas and project it as Hamas that has not been releasing the hostages?
Oh, is this to me?
Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon. Things are as complicated as they were even before the killing of Yahya Sinwar. Many other high-profile leaders from Hamas and Hezbollah have already been killed, but the war goes on. As far as Israel is concerned, basically, ever since the conflict started, Israel has two bottom lines. One, of course, is the release of hostages, and other is to avail of this opportunity to neutralize or weaken Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis to the extent it is possible. Israel would like to eliminate them altogether. But the point is, will Israel succeed? And at this point of time, will Hamas agree to, sort of de-escalate or put a pause in its war or come under pressure to release? Looks like very difficult. As far as the international community is concerned, the reactions have been on the very much predictable lines. All the Americans and the Western, their Western allies are expressing joy over the elimination or the killing of Yahya Sinwar, and sort of congratulating Israel for getting rid of a terrorist and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
I haven't come across a similar kind of sentiment from, anybody other than Americans and the Western allies. They are just keeping low. So this conflict may continue till such time as Israel decides or Iran retaliates in a manner that it goes beyond the current framework, and there is a direct involvement of Iran, or there is a direct attack on Iran. So once that happens, it is definitely a regional kind of, you can expect, because as it is, Iran's allies are also not short of giving many verbal, warnings, whether it is Russia, whether it is, others. Some of them have also made it clear that they will not allow their airspace to be used for any attack on Iran. So we are polarized. We
Okay.
remain polarized. The world remains, the Middle East remains polarized. The whole world remains polarized on this on this issue. So I think
Okay.
we are stuck. So we are stuck with the status quo, and I think let's give ourselves few more days to see which way the wind blows.
Okay. I also have with me Karen Daga. Thank you for joining us. She's the former combat combatant in the Israeli Defense Forces. Karen, now is there renewed hope that the 101 hostages for whom Israel has been fighting could be released, keeping in mind the top leadership of Hamas and the very man who orchestrated the October 7 attacks is no longer capable of waging a war simply because he has been neutralized, and several others have been as well. So there is no organization and a leader of the Hamas proxy terrorist group that could make decisions and allow for the hostage deal that could favor the Hamas, and which they at this point of time have been asking, that there needs to be end of war from Israel's side. There are a number of exchange for prisoners, which is what Hamas has needed. But when you don't have the top leadership to make the decisions, when it all falls flat.
Yes. I don't think that we're going to end this war in a few days. The enemy knew exactly where to strike at what is most precious to us, human lives. And there are still 101 hostages in their hands, alongside, with terrorists within our borders, massive attacks. It doesn't really over, It's a very big organization with hate and ideology that we need to determinate them.
Okay, all right. So at this point, like I said, is there hope that the 101 hostages, you are closing in on the release of the hostages? And second of all, the big allegation being made by Iran and other countries that are in support and are allies of Iran and Iranian proxies, that the Netanyahu government does not have value of Israeli lives.
Again, again, what you said? I don't hear you well.
The Netanyahu government has come under heavy criticism, talking about not allowing for a hostage deal up until now, despite overtures that have been made by several countries, including the Hamas organization, simply because the government does not value human life in Israel.
No, I don't believe this is true. It's not what we are feeling here. I can speak by myself. I just wanted to say one more thing before that. We spoke a year ago, just a few days after October 7th, and here in Israel, those was days of shock and frustration and deep fear. Over the past year, we've been through a lot as a nation, as an army, and as a Jews. And we realize how strong the hatred against us is. And perhaps we didn't fully understand until October 7th the depth of the resistance of our very existence as a country and as a Jews. But we face it all, and we've discovered incredible strength within ourselves, unity, compassion, and we hold our head high with pride and faith. And we have a very good army, and I think the government do her best, to put a deal on the table, to try to close it in. But when you are making a deal, you need to have someone in front of you, someone who could talk with. And I don't think this is the situation.
Okay.
This,
Okay.
my opinion.
But particularly again, the larger picture. It's when there are world leaders, including President Joe Biden, when you have Kamala Harris coming out and making such statements, there has been global support that has been given to Israel after the death of Yahya Sinwar. And these countries have designated Hamas as a terrorist organization. Again, coming to the point that this seems to be the end of the Hamas leadership as is at this point of time being projected. Should Israel be contented and move forward with its other operations on other borders and be fully ensured that the enemy along the Gaza border at this point of time is completely under control?
Well, I don't think anybody in Israel is thinking that that Hamas has been eliminated. It's not so. I mean, as I stated earlier, Hamas is basically an ideology filled with hatred. So Sinwar will be replaced by somebody else. Look, this is an election year in United States. So politicians in United States will come and take credit because, let me tell it very frankly, they actually have to keep the Jewish lobby happy. So they keep on making these statements. They require the Jewish fund, but at the same time, they have made life hard for Israel as well. They have not supported Israel. They have criticized Israel most of the time because they need the anti-Israel leftist vote in America as well, the Democratic Party. So they try to do this balancing act. So I don't give too much credence to what Kamala Harris says because you would see, let me say it very frankly, the entire top leadership of Hamas was based in Qatar, which is one of the top allies of United States. And USA knew all along that the leadership of Hamas is based in Qatar and what kind of conspiracy they do. And US was okay with it. So I think, let me tell you very frankly, yes, United States does support Israel, no doubt about it. But all along in the last 1 year, it has been a difficult war fought by Israel alone. And it is not an easy war for Israel because it's a very small country with a very small population. It doesn't have the strategic depth because geographically also it's a very small country. So a missile which is launched by Hamas or a Hezbollah can reach the extreme far ends of Israel. It's a very small country. So today, once Yahya Sinwar has been eliminated or Nasrallah was eliminated, a lot of people will come and take credit. But if at all the credit has to be taken, the credit has to be for the Israeli political leadership, the IDF and the people of Israel, because they are fighting it out. Everybody else, including the American leadership, political leadership is giving lip service.
Okay, all right. Let's hear it from Ambassador Archie Malhotra. The very success of Israel fighting against its entities and winning the war is hinged upon American military and financial and even diplomatic support. Is this a balance that is being struck by President Biden, while on one hand reprimanding Israel and cautioning against striking the nuclear sites and oil fields in Iran because it is going to then create a global crisis, versus on the other hand supporting Israel when it comes to striking Hamas and killing the terrorists that led to this 7th October attacks?
Well, I think if you carefully look at how the United States of America has been behaving ever since the outbreak of this conflict, my feeling is that that Americans, as far as Americans are concerned, they are okay with the current, scope of the conflict, which remains confined to Israel versus Hamas, Hezbollah, and Houthi. At the same time, they don't want the dimensions and the scope of this conflict go beyond. Particularly, they don't want the Iran's oil installations and definitely not a nuclear sites attack, because they will have serious economic and security implications. Even when there was just the possibility of Iran attacking energy installations of Iran, the Israel was, one was looking towards that. I believe there was some ripples in the energy market. So long as this remains, At the same time, Americans can't keep quiet, and so many human, innocent children, innocent people are being killed, and they just can't be, you can't just say that this is a collateral damage. So Americans feel compelled to speak out
Okay.
and tell Israel they have to say, otherwise, it goes against their own this thing. But to what extent they are doing it with mutual kind of understanding. The some At some point of time, even it looks like that the Israelis are not listening to
Yeah.
the Americans, and they are not following. Even recently, there was a statement from Israel. They said, "Yeah, we do listen to America as our good friend and ally, but ultimately we will do what is in the national interest of Israel." So we are not sure whether Joe Biden, in his last few days, has any real control over Israel. And Israel, which I said, has already put forward, has two major objectives. One is to get the hostages released, and other is to do as much damage as possible to Iran's proxies,
Right,
Hamas.
absolutely, absolutely. You absolutely rightly spoke about how Israel is not paying heed to what the United States wants the country to do, especially with regards to striking Hezbollah entities, bases, headquarters in Lebanon, whether it is about an Israeli potential counterstrike that takes place against Iran. Do you think, irrespective of how Israel reacts to the kind of conditions and warnings that are issued by the American leadership, the support will be unconditional when it comes to finance, when it comes to military aid? Ambassador Achal, this question is for you.
No, I don't think Americans are going to go back on, whatever the kind of their relationship with Israel, and it will be business as usual, so long as I think Israel listens to Americans and doesn't expand the scope of the conflict, and so long as it doesn't have a direct impact on America or its allies in one way or the other, or it doesn't get stretched to the regional kind of a conflict. So I think this situation is okay. Once in a while, for public consumption, for the international community's consumption, they'll keep pulling Israel here and there, while allowing them to, this is what happened. This is becoming a pattern. This is what happened in the 44 days war between Azerbaijan and Armenia. Azerbaijan attacked Nagorno-Karabakh and waged a war against Armenia for 44 days. The entire West, which was so much involved into resolving the conflict for last 32, 35 years, it just looked the other way. They allowed Azerbaijan to achieve its objective, which was to retrieve its lost territories, the territories which it had lost in 1992. Here, of course, the situation is not comparable, because there Azerbaijan was much stronger than poor Armenians. But here, Hamas, Hezbollah, they are a different, made up of something different, kind of. And as my other colleague on the panel has said, at the end of the day, it's a movement. It's an ideology, and ideologies don't die so quickly. There may be a pause in between. They may become weakened, and then you may face a situation where there will be suicide bombing inside, outside Israel, attacking Israeli establishment or installations or interest in third countries, which has happened in the past also. So let's hope
Okay.
something comes out of it, but doesn't look like in the near future.
Okay.
I don't know what is the optimism of Joe Biden when he talks about day after tomorrow. That itself says he's not looking at anything today, today or tomorrow, but he's talking about day after tomorrow. All these forces will be eliminated and things will fall in law. Well, in international context, day after tomorrow is a much, much, much distant future.
Okay. Pathik, before I conclude this conversation, here it took 2 decades for Israel to start off a war against Hezbollah and Hamas, which tapered down in 2006. And then you have a possibility, a plausibility that, you know, there could be the 101 hostages that could be returned. Will this incident, if it happens, is then going to calm Israel down, and with that the borders are then going to become much more calm, much more subdued, because the sole fight that Israel was fighting against these proxies was that there has been a terror attack. Their citizens have been killed, maimed, raped, and those 101 hostages, the hinge point, 101 hostages had been taken away by Hamas. If those are returned, there would be a semblance of retreating of the IDF forces back into Israeli territory.
Well, we must understand the Israeli doctrine when they fight this conflict. We have to understand that they are not there just for the sake of taking any revenge. They are trying to ensure that what happened on October 7 does not happen ever again. That means they are going to have a kind of a proportionate or disproportionate retaliation and retribution that acts as a deterrence. So if you ask me, I don't think their objective is just to rescue the hostages. We wish the hostages return, but they are trying to ensure that Hezbollah or Hamas or Houthis, their ability to strike Israel at will with rockets and now even with short-range ballistic missile is completely neutralized. Secondly, we must also understand what Iran did on Israel. If Iran, Israel is under a compulsion to do something, otherwise it will get normalized that every now and then Iran will send out 180 ballistic missiles. So we have to understand that Israel lives in a very difficult environment. It is easy for us to talk about it from India, but it's far more difficult to be an Israeli and settle there and actually fight it out on a daily basis. So I do not see any way the conflict is going to end, because borders, you might secure the borders, but how would you secure the airspace? The airspace is witnessing a relentless number of strikes by Houthis, Hezbollah and Hamas on a regular basis. So it's not that the attacks happened on October 7 and stopped after that. The attacks have continued till date, and that is what Israel is dealing with. Secondly, on the issue of collateral damages, the killing of children, we must understand this. The Hezbollah and the Hamas primarily based their stations and center points of control rooms of the terror organizations in the middle of civilian habitation. So they use the civilians as some kind of a shield, invariably in a situation like that, because they don't believe in Geneva Conventions. You would have unavoidable collateral damages, for which you might, for the sake of political correctness, people might blame Israel. But it is not easy to be in Israel and fight the war that Israel is fighting.
Okay.
So,
all right. But then again, if you take a look at the trajectory of how the war unfolded, was the October 7 attack. There had been retaliation and a massive one at that, where there was completely razing of the Gaza Strip through the entirety, to the length and breadth of it, and then there was a in reaction strikes coming in from Hezbollah and in Iraq, and then you also saw Houthis, and there was a 7-front war that at this point of time Israel is fighting. So again the question, if Israel was to halt on the condition that the hostages are returned, could there be a semblance of normalcy that could be witnessed along its borders? On that note, I thank all of you for joining me on the telecast, and thanks for watching NewsX.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.